The hidden betrayal. Discovering my wife cheated with my best friend. Shattering our marriage. Hi, my name's Jack. I'm 32 and a few months ago, things were great. I had my amazing wife, Emily, and my best friend Mike, who's like a brother since high school. We had so many fun memories, road trips, late night talks. Mike was there for me every time I needed advice or a shoulder to cry on, and Emily is the love of my life. After 5 years of being married, I thought nothing could come between us. But then it all went wrong when Emily and Mike started hanging out more. It started out innocently with backyard barbecues and weekend getaways. Mike was part of our group and I liked him. Nothing unusual about them texting, joking around. We were all close friends. Looking back, there were a few signs that I should have picked up on. Maybe it was how they laughed at each other's jokes way too loudly, or how Emily texted him a lot more. I trusted them both, though. They were the two most important people in my life, and I never thought they'd hurt me. Then one night, everything changed. Emily had been acting a bit distant for a few weeks, and I thought it was just stress from her new job. But when she didn't answer my questions, I got worried. She was spending more time on her phone and disappearing into her room for late-night calls. When I asked what was up, she said it was work or friends. I even offered to do more chores around the house, but nothing seemed to make a difference. I realized maybe I missed some signs. I should have paid more attention to how she was acting. If I knew what was up, I could have helped. But now it's too late. We're not together anymore, and I can only think about what I should have done differently. For a while, I've been wondering if she's hiding something from me. It hit me one night when Mike came over for a beer. We were sitting in the living room, talking and reminiscing, but she was quiet and tense. There was something off about her, so I started asking myself what was wrong. But then I pushed the thoughts away. Later that night, after Mike had left, I started to notice the first signs of trouble. I was tired from a long day and went to bed, but Emily was still awake, working. Around midnight, I got up for a drink and found her in the living room on the phone. Her voice was soft and quiet, and something just didn't feel right. Curiosity got the better of me, so I hung around in the hallway and listened in. They were giggling softly, like they often did when we were having private moments. Then I heard Mike's name, and my heart started racing. I tried to hear more, but it wasn't a normal conversation. Emily was talking to Mike in the middle of the night. It wasn't like she would normally talk to him, and I felt a knot form in my stomach. I knew something bad was happening. The next few days went by in a blur. I tried my best to act like everything was normal, but deep down, I was feeling like I was falling apart. I just couldn't get rid of the feeling that there was something going on between her and him. I kept my eyes peeled, looking for any signs, anything that could prove or disprove my suspicion. Then one day, my worst fears came true. I was at home working when I heard her phone buzzing in the kitchen. She had left it there while she ran some errands, so out of habit, I took a look at it. It was a message from him saying, "I just can't stop thinking about last night." My heart skipped a beat as I picked up her phone and opened his text thread with shaky hands. What I read made it clear. Their messages weren't just friendly chats. They were full of declarations of feelings and sneaky meetings when I wasn't there. Those nights she said she worked late turned out to be something completely different. It felt like the whole world was going crazy. All my trust was shattered when I found out that two people I thought were my closest friends had been lying to me for months. They were secretly dating behind my back, and it hurt more than I ever thought possible. Not only did Emily cheat, but she did it with Mike, who I thought I knew I could count on. I sat in the kitchen, staring at my phone, and feeling like my whole world was collapsing around me. I didn't know what to do. How could the people I loved hurt me so much? It just didn't make sense. In the days after, I felt like I was in a fog. I couldn't think straight, sleep, or eat. Every time I closed my eyes, Emily and Mike's faces would flash in front of me, laughing and sharing secrets they never meant for me to hear. Their texts on Emily's phone played over and over in my head, each word piercing my heart deeper. I knew I needed to talk to her, but how? How could I confront the person I loved for so long about betraying me? How could I look her in the eyes and demand the truth, when the truth was the last thing I wanted to hear? I couldn't live like that, pretending everything was okay while everything was a lie. After another silent dinner, where Emily barely said a word, I decided I'd waited long enough. She was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone when I walked into the room. My heart pounded and my hands shook, but I forced myself to be calm. "Emily," I started, trying to keep my voice calm despite the chaos inside me. "We need to talk about something." She looked at me, surprised by the serious tone in my voice. "What's up?" I took a deep breath, trying not to let my emotions get the best of me. "I found out about you and Mike," I said. For a moment, Emily just stared at me with an unreadable expression. Then she blinked and I saw something flash in her eyes, maybe fear, maybe guilt. She quickly looked away, playing with the edge of her phone nervously. "I have no idea what you're talking about," she said in a too calm, rehearsed voice. She was clearly lying, and we both knew it. "Don't play games, Emily," I said, feeling my voice rising slightly. "Let's just talk about it." "I'm so sorry, Jack," she said in a small voice. Her words hit me hard like a punch in the gut. Hearing her say she was sorry made it all so real. This wasn't a nightmare I could wake up from. It was my life. "How long?" I asked, my voice raw. "Have you been seeing someone behind my back for how long?" She hesitated, shame in her eyes. "A few months." The room started to spin. For months, they'd been sneaking around while I was clueless. Every time Mike visited, every night Emily kissed me, they were both lying. My voice broke. Why him?" Emily covered her face, and her shoulders started to shake. "I don't know," she sobbed. It just happened." I stood there watching her cry and felt nothing. Not sympathy, not anger, just empty. Her tears didn't mean anything to me. She destroyed everything. "And Mike," I said, my voice cold as I asked if he felt the same. "Was it all a mistake for both of you?" Emily didn't answer. Mike saw it as a mistake, but he wanted to hurt me just as much as she did. I turned and walked out the front door, my mind racing. I couldn't stay there. I couldn't be surrounded by memories in that house. I grabbed my keys and went, not sure where I was going. I drove around aimlessly for ages, my mind going over and over what had happened. How did it come to this? I thought back to every moment, every chat with Mike, every meal with Emily. Everything felt tainted now that I knew they'd betrayed me. Finally, I pulled over in a parking lot on the outskirts of town, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles were white. I just sat there in the darkness, staring at the empty road, trying to sort out the mess in my head. I wasn't sure what to do, confront Mike, completely cut him off, or demand some answers. Maybe even try and fix things with Emily, but it might be too late for that. Part of me wanted to yell at him, to make him feel the pain I was going through. But another part wanted to just run away and forget it all. I grabbed my phone and started scrolling through my contacts for Mike's number. I hesitated, with my finger hovering over the call button. I just couldn't do it. I didn't know what to say to him. How could I explain what had happened? What if he judged me? I was lost and didn't know where to turn. Instead of making the call, I tossed the phone into the passenger seat and slumped back in my seat, staring at the sky. My life felt like it had shattered, and I had no idea how to put it back together. The next few days were a blur of shock and numbness for me. I tried to avoid going home as much as I could, using any excuse not to go to a place that was now a constant reminder of all that I'd lost. Emily kept texting me, apologizing again and again, but I just couldn't bring myself to reply. What was the point, really? Her words felt so empty and meaningless after what she'd done. So instead, I stayed at a cheap motel on the edge of town where nobody asked any questions. The room was basic, with thin walls and the smell of smoke in the air, but that didn't matter to me. It wasn't about comfort, it was about escape. I didn't say anything about what happened to anyone, not my family, not my friends. I didn't want anyone to know how embarrassed I felt. I was so ashamed that my wife had cheated on me with my best friend. I didn't even know how to look them in the eye. So all I did was work hard during the day and drink alcohol at night, trying to drown out my sadness. Time passed, but I couldn't keep running away from the problem. Finally, I decided to talk to Mike. It was hard, but I needed to know his side of the story. Why would someone I trusted cheat on me like that? After a week, I texted him and asked if we could meet. He didn't answer right away, but then my phone rang and it was him. "Jack, I'm so sorry. Let's meet and talk, okay?" His apology, while short, left me feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "I'm sorry." That's all he had to say after all these months of betrayal. I tried to swallow my anger, though. I wanted answers, not just empty apologies. We agreed to meet at a bar on the outskirts of town, a place we used to go to before things got complicated. I got there early and grabbed a corner booth, wanting some privacy in the dim lights. I didn't want anyone to recognize me, didn't want people to stare at me with those curious looks. After ordering my third drink of the night, I waited. A few minutes later, Mike showed up, looking like he hadn't slept at all. He spotted me, hesitated for a second, then headed towards the booth. We sat there in awkward silence, the weight of all the unspoken stuff hanging in the air. "Jack," he started, voice soft and careful, like he didn't want to set me off. I He looked down at his hands, rubbing them nervously before meeting my eyes. I have no excuse, man. I really don't know how it happened. It wasn't meant to be, I scoffed, anger rising to the surface, trying to suppress it. It wasn't meant to happen? You cheated on my wife, Mike. My wife. How can you tell me that wasn't planned? He flinched at my harsh words, but didn't look away. I know I made a mistake. I know I betrayed your trust. But it wasn't intentional, I swear. It all started innocently. We just started talking about things, about life, about you, and one night it just what? You couldn't control yourself, I snapped, fists clenched under the table. You're my best friend, and you're lying to me. How long have you been doing this behind my back? He looked miserable, but I didn't have any sympathy for him. It's been a few months, he quietly admitted. I didn't mean to hurt you, man. I swear, it wasn't meant to be like this. I laughed bitterly. Months, and you didn't tell me? You could have told me the truth earlier. I tried, he said, his voice cracking slightly. But every time I wanted to say the truth, I backed out because I was scared of losing our friendship. You're like my brother, man. Those words stung like hell. If that's what brotherhood is to him, I don't need it. Do you love her? I asked, the question hanging between us. He hesitated, and that was all the answer I needed. Jesus, I muttered, running my hands through my hair. Do you love her? Don't you? He tried to explain, saying it's not as simple as that. He doesn't really know how he feels. He cares for her, but he didn't want this to happen either. But you did, though, I said, my voice shaking with barely contained anger. You hurt me worse than anyone could imagine. Both of you, Emily and you. He lowered his head, guilt written all over his face. But it didn't help me feel any better. I wanted to punch him, to feel just a little of the pain he'd caused me. But I knew it wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't take away the hurt. I sat there, staring at him, my mind racing with everything I wanted to say and do. What was the point, though? He'd made his choice, and so had Emily. I can't forgive you, I finally said, my tone cold. Not right now. Maybe not ever. You were supposed to be my best friend, Mike, like a brother. But you destroyed that. He nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. He didn't argue because there was nothing to say. I know, Jack, he said softly, emotion thick in his voice. I really am sorry. I didn't even bother to respond to his sorry. It didn't mean anything to me. So I just got up, threw some cash on the table for drinks, and said, I don't really know what's going to happen next, but I need some space. So please don't try to contact me. Then I just left the bar without waiting for an answer. The cool air outside felt nice and refreshing, but I was feeling numb and exhausted. I had no idea where I was going or what to do next. But one thing was for sure, my life as I knew it had ended. It's been 2 weeks since I stormed out of that bar and told Mike to leave me alone. 2 weeks of radio silence, trying to figure out my next move. I barely went back to the house at all, if at all. It was too hard to face Emily and all the drama from our marriage. I'm still staying in that cheap hotel, just going through the motions at work and ignoring the emptiness in my life. Every day, Emily texts me, begging me to come back, to talk, to let her explain. She says she loves me and wants us to be back together. But every text reminds me of what she did. How can she say she loves me after that? Finally, after a long day at work, I break my silence and call her. Her voice is full of hope when she answers. Jack, she says, I'm so glad you called. I say, we need to meet up and talk in person. Sure, she said quickly. Whenever you're ready, come over, okay? I paused. The house didn't feel like home anymore. It was just filled with painful memories, but I knew I needed to face them. I couldn't run away forever. Yeah, I said. I'll come tonight. The ride home felt longer than usual. Each mile felt heavy with dread. When I parked, it felt like forever before I could finally bring myself to walk inside. The house was so quiet, a silence that made my skin crawl. Emily was waiting for me in the living room, sitting on the couch with her hands in her lap, looking nervous. When she saw me, she stood up. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying a lot. Jack, she started, taking a step towards me. I held up my hand to stop her. Don't say anything. I don't want apologies. Just want to talk, understand? She nodded and sat down, brushing away a tear that had rolled down her cheek. I sat opposite her, trying to hold my emotions in check. I didn't want to break down, I didn't want to lose control, but I needed some answers. I know I messed up, Emily said quietly. I ruined everything, and I hate myself for it. That's not what I want to hear, I said coolly. I want to know why you did it. Was I not giving you enough attention? Have you stopped loving me? She quickly shook her head, her eyes full of sadness. No, Jack, that's not it. I still love you. I was just lost, I guess. You were so busy with work, and we started drifting apart. Then Mike came along, and he was there for me when you weren't. My hands clenched into fists as anger started to rise again. So what? I wasn't giving you enough. So you went for my best friend. Emily winced at my sharp tone. That's not how it was. I didn't go looking for someone else. It just kind of happened. I made a huge mistake and regret it every single day since. Her words weren't really helping with the pain. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a betrayal that destroyed everything we thought we had together. You should have stopped months ago, I said, my voice full of anger. For months, Emily, this wasn't some one-time thing. You lied over and over again. I know, she whispered, tears now streaming down her face. I don't expect forgiveness, but I do want to try. Jack, I want to work things out between us. I leaned back in my chair and stared at her, thinking about what she'd said. Could we work things out? Could I trust her again after everything she'd done? It seemed impossible to go back to the way things were before. The trust was broken. The bond between us was gone. But even so, there was still a part of me that loved her. There was a part of me that wanted to believe we could overcome this, although I didn't know how. I'm not sure if I can ever forgive you, I finally said, my voice softer. I don't think I can trust you anymore. She started crying harder, hiding her face in her hands. Please, Jack, please forgive me. I'll do anything to make it right. I love you so much. Don't leave me. Her words hung in the air, and for the first time since things had fallen apart, I didn't just feel pure anger. I was tired and exhausted from carrying this betrayal around for so long, and I felt lost, not sure what to do. Should I give Emily another chance? Could I deal with knowing what she did, knowing it might always be there between us? I need some time to think, I said, getting up. Can't decide right now. Emily nodded, her eyes full of tears, begging me to understand. Take as long as you need. I'm here. I'll do anything, Jack. Just want us to work things out. I didn't know what to say, so I left the house and walked out the door. Once again, I found myself sitting in my car, not knowing where to go. Staying at the motel another night seemed unbearable, but it was all I could think of. I was just driving around, not really going anywhere in particular. I was thinking about all the stuff that had happened, with Emily and Mike, and my life, and everything. I was feeling kind of lost, like my life had just been ripped out from under me. Then, before I knew it, I was driving towards my bro's house. My bro lives a few towns over from where I do, and we haven't talked for ages, but at the time, he was all I wanted to see. It was late when I got there, so I wasn't sure he'd even be home. But then the door opened, and there he was. Jack, what's up? He said. I couldn't tell him everything right then, so I just looked at him with those tired eyes and said, need somewhere to crash for the night. He didn't hesitate, he just nodded and let me in. Staying with my bro was a weird mix of comfortable and awkward. We hadn't talked for years, but at that point he was just what I needed, someone who didn't bombard me with questions and let me be quiet without judgment. He wasn't nosy or pushy. He just gave me space to think in his spare room. It took me a few days to warm up to him. One night, as we were sitting on his back patio, drinking beers in the cool air, I finally spilled everything. I told him about Emily and Mike, all the lies and betrayals that caught me off guard. I didn't hold back. I gave it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly. He listened carefully with a serious expression. I could tell he was mad on my behalf, but he didn't interrupt me. After I was done, he took a deep swig of his beer and shook his head. Jesus, Jack, this is crazy. I don't even know what to say right now. I can't believe that Mike would do something like that, I said, staring at the bottle of wine in my hand. He just nodded, and we sat there in silence for a minute, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on us. Finally, he broke the silence and asked, "So what are you going to do now? How can you ever trust someone after something like this?" I sighed and shrugged. I have no idea. I want to give it another shot with Emily, but it's going to be hard to trust her again. She hurt me so much. Jack nodded in understanding. Yeah, I know. But remember, there are always cracks in any relationship, no matter how perfect it seems from the outside. I agreed with him. That's exactly how I felt. Like there was a permanent scar in our relationship, a reminder of what had happened. Maybe we could forgive each other, but the pain would always be there. So my bro said, maybe you need to make a decision. Can you live with those scars, or do you want to start over with someone new? He left me thinking, could I really deal with the past? Should I just leave and move on? The next day, I decided I wasn't going to run away. I wouldn't hide in my bro's room, avoiding my life. I needed to face Emily one last time and see if there was anything left to salvage from our mess, or if it was really time to say goodbye. So I called her up and suggested meeting at a neutral place, away from our homes and all the bad memories. She agreed, picking a little cafe in the city center, the one we went to when we started dating. It felt like a lifetime ago, when we were young and in love. When I walked in, she was already sitting at a table near the window, fiddling with her coffee cup. As I came over, I could see fear and hope in her eyes. When I took a seat, she stood up, unsure whether to give me a hug. In the end, she sat back down, her hands gripping her lap tightly. "Thanks for coming," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "I know this isn't easy," I agreed, trying not to make the situation more awkward. For a minute or two, we just sat there, not sure what to say. Then, Emily broke the silence. "I've been thinking about us," she said, staring at her lap, "about what I did and how I treated you. I was wrong asking you to come back so quickly. I wanted things to be better, but I didn't think about how much pain I'd caused you." She continued, "I'm so sorry, Jack. I know I hurt you a lot. I love you so much, but it just wasn't enough. My words hurt you deeply, and I see the cracks in our relationship are too wide. Trust is broken and the foundation is destroyed. Maybe it's too late to fix things. I've thought about it too," I said firmly. "I don't think we can just go back to the way things were before. I don't believe we can fix what happened. I can't forget what happened, and even if I forgave you, I would always worry it could happen again. I just can't do that." Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. "I understand, I really do," she said. "You deserve so much better than me, but I'm glad you're being honest." For the first time in a while, we had a moment of clarity between us. Even though it was a painful decision, it was right for both of us to move on and pursue new paths. I said softly, "I'm going to file for a divorce." I could feel the finality in my words. Emily looked pale, but determined as she nodded. "Okay, I understand. I'll do whatever you need. All I want is for you to be happy, Jack." "I'm sorry." "I know," I said, standing up. "I'm sorry too." With that, I left the cafe and the woman I had thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. It felt strange. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but now that it was happening, all I felt was relief. For the next few months, I focused on building my life again. The divorce process went smoothly, and Emily and I parted ways without drama. I completely cut off contact with Mike, realizing he was another casualty in this situation. There was no going back, and I finally accepted it. I moved to a new place, far away from all the memories of my old house. I threw myself into my work and reconnected with my friends, and slowly but surely, I started to feel like myself again. The pain of the past wasn't gone overnight, but it started to fade away as I made a new start for myself. The future is still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I'm hopeful. I learned that sometimes you have to leave the past in the past, to accept the imperfections and keep moving forward, knowing that there's something better on the other side. If you like such stories, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. It will be the biggest support for me.